Does traditional education deliver or fall short in educating and nurturing children? Introducing Aligned Learning Revolution, the show that confronts conventional norms and presents dynamic alternatives to transform education. Host Kahila Sivas tackles the foundational issues within classroom walls and advocates for holistic learning opportunities. It's time to reveal the strength of the innovative, holistic neurogrowth learning approach that goes beyond conventional teaching or tutoring methods, assuring every learner of a stress-free learning journey to unlock their fullest potential. Now, join Kahila Sivas.
Welcome, Aaron. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, Kohila, thank you so much for having me. This is a pleasure. This is an honor.
Amazing. So I was reading your bio, and you said in that you're a first-generation college grad. That was your biggest accomplishment so far.
One of the
One of the
top,
biggest
for
ones.
sure.
For sure. So tell me, why was it so big?
That's a great question. It was so big for me because and I'll tell this story when I give a speech to students as well and to corporations or whoever I speak to, is when I got my diploma, the day of graduation, it took 16 steps to go from one end of the stage to the other. I counted them out because it was so vivid, it was so special a moment. Because I thought about everything that my parents had sacrificed to do, everything that they had done to give my sister and I the chance to go to university. They never had that opportunity, but they had the wherewithal to say, I'm going to plan now so that future is possible for my children. It took 12 steps to go from one end to the dean. I shook his hand. I took the picture and that whole business. I waved to my family, and then I took 4 steps off the stage. But every step that I took, I was thinking of the teachers and the mentors and the complete strangers who gave me a word of advice or poured their time, effort, money into me in some cases, believing that I could be something in the future. So when I walked across that stage, it wasn't just me, the college grad. I got my diploma. Aaron got his diploma. It was mom and dad made this possible. Mrs. Johnson from my PE 5th grade class made this possible, who believed that I could play baseball in college one day. It was the people who told me that you couldn't do it, but still were a part of that story that led to the college graduate that I am today. There was a culmination of life experience and academic struggle that I was able to overcome, that holding up that diploma was so much more than just saying I graduated from school. It was the start of a new future, unmapped territory for my family. I've told the story as well, is when I got my diploma and then I got the white collar job at a desk, I didn't know what to do because it was not sweat equity. My mother was a flamenco dancer. The more shows she did, the more she got paid. My father was a firefighter. It was very labor intensive. You were physically tired and labored at the end of the day. That meant you put in a hard day's work. And that's what I was raised on. But now hard work looked like sending emails and making phone calls and going on client meetings. But in my head, I was tired, but I was trying to figure out even just that territory of, oh, this is what hard work looks like. I guess I kind of need to adjust my dials and look at this through a new frame. So there was a lot of learning that came after, but having the chance to even explore that territory, that's what was happening in those 16 steps. So it was a huge accomplishment because it wasn't me, it was everybody that poured into me.
That's amazing. You counted your steps.
I really wanted to soak in the moment. I'm
Yeah.
sure you're familiar with like Clifton's Strengths Finders and Gallup, and my number 2 is futuristic. So I have a tendency to think ahead, what's going to happen in the future, what's going on, ahead. And that's got its advantages and disadvantages, of course. The disadvantage is that it yanks me out of the present. What's happening right now in front of you, Aaron, focus on this. The good part is that I get to partner with people who are better skilled at that than me and kind of keep me in check. But that was one of the moments in my life where I was as present as I could possibly be. I wanted to really soak it in and think, this is where 4 years has now come to. 4 years has led up to this, all the friendships, all of the failed tests, the extra study hours, the interterm courses, between sessions to catch up in my degree, not knowing if I was going to make a class or not. This is it right here. And I just wanted to soak it in. And I had just my family members in the audience, but that moment was so special for me. But 16 steps.
Amazing. Amazing. Maybe there's a book in that. what you
I'll let
remembered
you
in
know.
each of those steps, right? What you remembered in each of those steps.
Yep.
But let me go back to your teacher, because you said I was thanking one of my teachers, because this podcast is for parents, teachers, administrators, right?
Yeah.
So why do you remember that one teacher? You even mentioned a name.
So she was just one of a few. Her name was Mrs. Johnson. She was my fifth grade PE teacher. She had so much charisma and she had so much fun with us as kids. And at the time, I'm 10 years old in the fifth grade, and you don't really understand these things because you're so young. But in hindsight, I've spent some time thinking about this. She made a point to give us attention, to like make us feel seen and recognize that, oh, like you do this really well. I played Little League baseball my entire life. Baseball got me into college, and the Little League was just a park over. And I would tell her, Miss Johnson, look at this. Look, I could throw a baseball. I could throw this tennis ball. And I said, I'm one of the harder throwers in the league, whether I was or not. I would just tell her that. And when I would throw, she would just like, wow, hey, you're good. You're really good. And it spoke belief into me. And what I loved about her doing that was that it had nothing to do with anything she was teaching in PE class. She wasn't teaching me how to do jumping jacks or sit-ups or run the quarter mile, whatever it was. That was her recognition of me being able to do something, which is that confidence, right? Instilling that belief that, hey, if I can do this, well, maybe there's something else that I think I can do well, that I actually do well. I've told this to people before. The best teachers that I've ever had, the best coaches I've ever had with baseball and in sports, they weren't my favorite coach or teacher because they taught me something about the subject or the sport. It was because they taught me something about life. We had a baseball coach, one of the best summer ball I ever played in my life, which that was actually kind of the tail end of my career with baseball, was when we would travel for games, we would have to all hop into a van. We travel locally throughout California. We weren't allowed to leave. He wouldn't start the engine until we all sent a text or called a parent or a guardian or somebody who supported our baseball journey. He's like, we're not leaving. And we'd have to show our phones. We have to show receipts and say, yep, I sent it to mom, or I sent it to uncle. I sent it to my neighbor or godfather. He's like, good. All right, now we can go. He was teaching us gratitude. He was teaching us self-reflection. Hey, no one is ever self-made. You didn't get here on your own. Somebody believed that you could do this, and you're here now. They deserve that recognition. He was teaching us this. That had nothing to do with baseball. That had everything to do with life. And it's the same way with teachers. Every vivid memory I have of someone who's made an impact on my life was because they taught me how to be a better contributor to society, a better man, a better human being.
And they also respected you, even though you were young. There was a respect, right? Mutual respect between you and the teachers.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's very important. So now, Aaron, I don't know if you know, in the school system, there's a big problem is happening in our school systems where students don't want to be there because they don't feel it's relevant to learn what they're learning in the classroom. They don't see it's the point. What do you think about that? Is it what you learned in the classroom? Is it relevant to what you're doing now?
That's a funny question. You should ask that because I used to work in higher education. After I graduated from the university I attended, I worked at a marketing agency for about 6 months, and then I got recruited to work in the career services office at the university I attended. And the constant debate, especially at the collegiate level, is what's the ROI of college? Is it worth it? Is college a scam? Is it actually worth its merit? But is it only good for the sciences? Does it make any sense to do anything else? My opinion of this, and I'll say that, I'll preface my answer with, it's my opinion. It's based on my personal experience, right? I don't pretend to speak for everybody. I don't pretend to speak on behalf of a huge group of people, right? This is purely my own opinion. I'm a first generation student. I know that the education I received has opened doors that my parents couldn't have had without an education, or weren't able to have because they didn't have that same path. From a money-making standpoint, could you put tens of thousands, often sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars into an education, into a degree that may or may not apply to the real world? Yeah, that's a huge risk. I studied marketing in college. I worked for a marketing agency when I graduated. I was a project manager, junior project manager. And I will say that only about 20% of what I studied tangibly applied to my job, which was a marketing agency. I study marketing. And I was honestly, that was a rude awakening for me, thinking, man, I just graduated from college. I got the degree. I should know how to do this. I should know how this works. I should know how to answer the question, what is marketing? beyond 5 simple answers like, oh, it's social media, billboards, commercials, and campaigns, and now I don't know what else to say. I should know how to be more thorough with that response. Is it my fault? Did I not learn enough? Did the teachers not teach me properly? So there is something to be said for like the tangible element. Yes, you cannot expect that just because you have a diploma, you're set in stone. I very seriously preach this to college students when I speak to them, saying that college is not a ticket, it is a tool. You have to learn how to use your education. You have to ask questions, build relationships with your professors. Hey, I'm studying this marketing degree right now. I'm still trying to figure out how to apply it. What do you think the real world application of this lesson that you're teaching us looks like? Oftentimes students just don't know what it looks like. So they don't recognize, oh, this is that lesson we learned. This is how I do market research. This is how I apply data to this decision. This is how I know that there's a positive response from what we're doing here. They don't oftentimes don't know that because they're so focused on, I got to pass the class. I just got to get the A, right? And that's that conversation I'm sure you're familiar with of the A doesn't mean, an A in the class doesn't mean an A in life, right? So on one side, yeah, there is definitely some holes in the education system where as far as the real world application could be refined. However, I will say to say that there is no ROI on college, to say that the education system is failing entirely or that students just don't want to show up, I think that also requires an element of educating the students beyond the subject. Asking them, what are you here for? Are you here just because mom and dad told you, or are you here for a reason? I was there because I knew that my parents didn't have the chance. And I was going to have to blaze a new trail, create a new future for my family, for my future family, future kids, future wife that I don't have yet, but planning ahead, right? It's the futuristic part of me. Understanding what you're there for, I think is the conversation that students need to have, that teachers aren't taking the time to do. The few that do, they are the real heroes because they give the students a direction to head in. Aristotle said it. What's the quote that says, if a man knows not where he sails, no wind is favorable. You don't know if something's helping you or hindering you. You have to have a North Star. You have to have a direction that you're headed in. If teachers can do that much, that's when you go from teacher to educator. The difference being like education doesn't have to just remain in the classroom. If teachers can make that little adjustment, it doesn't take much, but meeting the student where they're at and saying, what are you here for? And helping them realize what they're there for, I think that would really help them look at college and education through a lens of, I know how to apply this. I know how this works. But just going in to get the A, I think that's a conversation that is really permeated throughout the student experience so that when they graduate, they're like, well, I'm no longer trying to get an A. Now what? There's no real skill that's developed. And that was a long-winded answer, but I hope that.
No, absolutely. And also, there's no relevance to what you're doing, right? Because if you don't know why, you never want to do what you're being asked. It's forced.
Yeah. One of the biggest benefits of working in the career services office when I was in higher ed was we were required to be familiar with all of the strengths assessments, the Enneagram, the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs, and your Cliftons. And then I even went further to explore some of the free professional personality tests. Like Red Bull has one, not endorsed by them, not ambassador, but I know that they have some stuff out there. DISC, another one, very famous one.
Yeah. And
taking those assessments, I was starting to see a common thread between all of them that said, oh, this is my natural skill set. I like to talk. I like to communicate. I like to socialize. Now, how can I use that? Pair it with a passion, something that I have a background in. Maybe there's a career path there. Maybe there's a way for me to take classes that reinforce those innate strengths and allow me to partner with people who are maybe better at some of my weaknesses. I know that, people we've been to with masterminds, they'll say, work on your strengths, hire your weaknesses. That's a professional application, but the educational application of that is work with students who are better at certain things than you are, and then you reinforce and support them in the areas that you're stronger at than that they aren't at. Students even being able to articulate that point to a recruiter, and my job was to work with recruiters. My job was to get recruiters to recruit from the school. So if I had a chance to meet with students, I would say, hey, look, you working on school projects, don't let the answer of, I know how to work on a team, stop at school projects. Say, I work on school projects, but I intentionally pick the people that I'm not, who are good at things that I'm not good at. That's self-awareness. That's critical thinking. That will set a recruiter to think, okay, I need to pay attention to this candidate.
Absolutely. So when did you decide in your career that you want to be a speaker?
I laugh because this is such a it's the word that comes to mind is just interesting. It's a funny question because I graduated school, worked in a marketing agency, studied marketing, thought this has got to be the fit.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was sexy, it was fun, it was fast paced. Got to work with Adidas.
Before
One,
you answer that, why did you leave marketing? Answer that and then answer me why
yeah,
you
yeah,
switched.
yeah. Okay, so I'll give you the origin story. Graduated school, went to the marketing agency, Starch Creative, they're still around, love them, love those people, got great experience. They were patient with me. Was there for 6 months, got to do some really fun stuff with Adidas and Fox Motorsports and Vans and like all the action sports. It was super fun. Then I got recruited to work at the university by my then boss, who I actually told no the first time she reached out because I was having such a good time. And she said, hey, like the perk of you being a full-time staff at the school is if you want to pursue a master's, you get a nice discount. Like, okay, as a first-gen student, that's a pretty sweet offer. I never even thought of going for a master's. In my head, it was graduate, done, time to work, right? Master's, that could be a huge advantage. Well, it's pretty hard to pass that up. And I actually talked with my former boss and the company owner saying, hey, this is what happened. I was very transparent about it, and I had a great relationship with them, so I could do that. I didn't have to do it in secret. Ultimately, that was kind of the good sell point, but I left on very good terms with that organization. I still keep in contact with them via Instagram and check in on them. And they with me. Was there for about almost 5 years. And I knew that I liked higher ed, but the ceiling for growth within higher education was pretty low, as I'm sure you know. Like it's if you want to make more money, you kind of have to put your 20 years in, or you have to wait for someone above you to retire, which again, they'll be there for however many decades. So it's a bit of a long stretch, or you just have to hop around school and hope for another title. And that's a bit of a strategy, but it's not a strategy that I wanted to take. I had an opportunity to move from higher education into industry in consulting, corporate America. And everything I knew about corporate America up until that point was recycled air, it was gray walls, and it was you say hello to people in the hallways and you stand by the water cooler. That every stereotype of corporate America was all that I knew. And I didn't really like that idea of working in that environment because I had an office, going to a cubicle, but I knew that it was going to be significantly better pay, consulting firm, a small boutique one, but great pay. I knew that I was going to be working with people my age that were all wicked intelligent, but I wasn't sure what else to expect. And I wanted the accolades of consultant on my resume. So an opportunity came. I had a friend who worked in HR there, and he kind of helped me through the recruitment process and was able to get hired there. The biggest mistake I made, though, was that I was more excited to leave the university than I was to take the job at the consulting firm, which for any young listeners who are out there, if you're a student who's looking to change careers, or if you want to make more money, I've had jobs that paid significantly less that I loved. The marketing agency, for example, they were a startup. They paid me half of what I had verbally committed to a different job in retail for, but I didn't want to do retail. I took the passion job, loved it. Worked in higher ed, liked it, but there was a ceiling for growth, and that did pay me more than the marketing agency. And then I took a job that was really for money. It was for a title and a resume boost, but it killed me. The work was soul sucking. I was, as you know, clearly like to talk, I like to socialize, but I was sitting behind a computer for 7.5 hours a day, digging through Excel files that were big enough to stall my computer. My computer damn near crashed several times, and they're 100,000 rows down. Like these things are very complex data sets that I need to understand. Okay, what's happening here, and how do I articulate to a client that a project is going well or not so great, and then what's the solution? So there's a whole lot of understanding that you gotta do there. Loved who I worked with, loved the people. The pay was great, title was great, but the job, the work itself was just killing me. And it got to a point where my physical health, my mental health, spiritual health, everything was what had really hit a low. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that story. Like it had gotten to a point where I've never been the person to have really those dark negative thoughts. I've never been that person. Look at any baby picture. I'm a happy, smiling kid playing with dirt, eating worms, that kind of kid. But I had gotten to a point where it was such a low that it was depression, it really was. It was scary. I've never been that way, but was able to work through that. And in the process of digging my way out of that pit of darkness, I connected with James Dixon, who we both know. I've been following Absolute Motivation for about 2 years. Loved the motivational channels, loved the motivational speakers, knew who they all were by voice and name, but I didn't know who James was. I've been following this channel. I'm like, who is this guy? So I dig through the credits. I find this guy's name, James Dixon. I'm like, okay. So I look him up on Instagram. I'm like, I think this is the guy. And so I sent him a nice message just saying, Mr. Dixon, sir, my name is Aaron. I just want to say thank you for the message, the words that you've put out on Absolute Motivation. Been following for about 2 years. It's done a lot for my life, and I just want to say thank you. Keep up the great work. I figured at the very worst, I send a nice message to a random James Dixon who's not him, and then I just keep looking, right? So now James has got a great message. But it was the right James. He replies to me, follows me back, sends me a voice note. And from that point on, this was February of last year, so very recent, we started having like 45 to an hour long conversations on the phone. And we would talk about life and work and family and faith and future and dreams. And I would tell him, I think I got to be a speaker. I've been putting out motivational content on my Instagram for the past 5 years, most of which was with radio silence, not trying to get a paid gig or nothing like that, but just to put some positivity in the world. And he's like, okay, yeah, well, let's stay in touch. Little did I know that over the next 6 months, he was scouting me for Absolute Motivation. He wanted to see, okay, is this kid really about what he's talking about? Is he really going to walk the walk? And that's when he invited me to Prosperity Camp. That was on a Wednesday. Hot seat on the Wednesday, so opportunity chair, as y'all know. And then by Friday, he approached me and said, would you like to be a part of the Absolute Motivation team? Like, I would love to. So it was a long, drawn out process of doing things for passion, doing things because I enjoyed them, not for money, doing things that were kind of in the middle ground, and then doing things for money that absolutely were soul sucking, and then realizing I had to go to such a low to realize something needed to change. It was the pain, when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. The pain of staying the same had never been so high. And that's when the risk of, this is entrepreneurial. This is, you eat what you kill. You got to do the cold outreach. You got to make sure your message is tight and strong. It was terrifying, but that was not nearly as terrifying as staying where I was. And James happened to enter my life at the right time.
Beautiful. Love it. Love it. So why do you want to speak to young people? Because you said you go to schools, colleges, university. Why did you choose to do that? Like, what is your real why?
My real why would be, yeah, from the heart. If you look at my website, I have athlete, speaker, servant. Athlete and speaker are just kind of two outlets that I have for making an impact. But servant, that's the biggest word of them all. Everybody wants to help people. You can ask anybody, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to help people. I'm inspired by helping people. That's what I wake up in the morning to do. Okay, but how? And in what manner? I've told this to students, the story of how my mother would always tell me, Aaron, use what you know to figure out what you don't know. And as I've gotten older, that phrase has become, Aaron, use what you have to obtain what you don't have. What I have is a voice. What I have is a knack for speaking. What I have is athleticism. Maybe if I use those correctly, then I can obtain what I don't have, which is paying off my family's house, sending them on a vacation that they deserve, reinstating the sports, arts, and music programs at my middle school that got cut when I was in the 8th grade, because I know what they did for me. It's so much not about me. I was speaking motivation for 4.5 years until I finally got in touch with James. It was 5 years until something happened with Absolute Motivation. I don't do this because I want to look like the guy. I don't want to be the Insta famous. That has so much not to do with it. That is completely out of the question. It has everything to do with trying to leave all people, places, and things better than I found them. And the best way that I can do that while using the God-given gifts that I believe I've been given is to speak. And if I'm going to speak, the power of life and death are in the tongue. I want to speak life. If power is in the tongue, then maybe I have a more powerful tool than I realize. Maybe I can stir hearts. Maybe I can change economies. Maybe I can uplift people who are going to be the president of the country next. Who changers, community leaders. Maybe that's riding on me and my ability to speak and my willingness to speak more rather. My why is so much about being in service to the world. If I stay quiet, if I stay on mute, as James would say, then what I'm doing is spiritually criminal. I have to do this. I have to, period. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. I like it. So Aaron, you're now speaking to young people, right? So there is a lot of students, young people who are depressed, but when they look at social media, everyone's happy. They're posting happy picture. It's not a place you can really share that I'm feeling not good. And since COVID, that number has risen, right? So how can people like that be helped by what you're sharing?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think my message is to combat the negativity on social media. I did at one point have this chapter of my life where I wanted to make money on social media. So what did I do? I followed all the hustler, the entrepreneur accounts where people are posing in front of Lamborghinis and they got the watches. And without me really being aware of it, to my naivety, I didn't know it was all fake. I just assumed that's the lifestyle they live and that's the lifestyle I want. So I followed them and I said, hey, how do you do what you do? And there's a chapter of my life and also part of the book where it's social media and snake oil. And you're selling Instagram growth or this follow and follow service, and you're basically selling a bag of goods to people so that you can get paid, so they can bankroll whatever lifestyle you're trying to front on social media. It took a little bit for me to realize that something here wasn't right. And I was able to separate myself and make right on anybody that I'd ever sold any type of service or product to and say, I'm so sorry, do not continue with this service. I've learned something that I didn't know before, and I apologize for that. But I've had a close look at the fakeness of social media to the point where you're going to studios, photo studios, where it looks like a private jet, but it's just the prop inside hull of it. It's fake money. It's fake Gucci bags, Fucci bags. The window on the private jet, it's motion picture. And you can hold your phone right up to it and you can change it to look like Fiji or Paris, daytime, nighttime, and you would never be able to know the difference. So to the kids out there, the students out there who are locked into this comparison of what they see in social media, I'm no exception to it. I'm better at it now than I was, but know that so much of social media can be faked, and it's shockingly and scarily easy to do so. My mission is to be as authentic as possible on social media. Is to be authentic as possible in everything that I do and win, so that those kids who are stuck in this comparison trap realize that there is a way to win without faking it. That there is a way to win without having to, dress in a scantily clad manner in order to get attention and likes. You don't have to do that. You don't have to sell out in the name of trying to go viral. I promise you that is a fruitless pursuit. It is not worth chasing. How I can benefit those students is like I said, just being an authentic example of what winning looks like the right way. There's a quote that says, hey, it's taking longer for you, but it's taking longer for you because you're not trying to scam people. You're not trying to sell them a bag of goods. You're not trying to connive and manipulate your way to the top. Take your time. I've been in rooms where I've been very close to people who did operate that way. And then in that same room, there was somebody who was, had 20 years, 30 years more of industry experience, who would look at me and look at the other person, and this other person who claimed to have XYZ or B, 1, 2, 3, they would look at them and I could see that they could see right through them. But it's because that other person did it the right way. They talk about real recognizes real recognized fake. And if you want to be fake, if you want to fake your way to the top, I promise you will always get found out. You might be able to get from level 1 to level 2, level 2 to level 3, but from 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, no way. I promise you, it is not worth it. It is not worth it. I almost went down that track, but I was fortunate to say, nope, backpedal, restart. It was one of the best decisions I could have possibly made.
Yeah. And that's why Absolute Motivational channel is so amazing, because they really show the real stuff, right? We talk about the real stuff, the real things that we face.
Real stuff.
The fear, the anxiety, the sadness,
all of
comparison, right? Everything.
All of it. People will feel that no one understands them. You can throw a rock and hit somebody who understands you. But it's about the willingness to share that pain, share that story of overcoming. Something that I tell people is, when I was in such that pit of that low point in my life, people would say, find the light at the end of the tunnel, stay positive. And I get that, but I wasn't even in a tunnel. I was in a valley of darkness. You don't find the light at the end of the tunnel in a valley. You're not in the right setting. But what they should have told me was, you don't look for the light in a valley of darkness, you become the light. When you become the light, that's when you can look down and see your feet. Oh, now I see the path that I'm walking on. And then as you start walking, your light gets brighter. Then you start looking to your left, to your right, and you see that there are other people in the dark who are lost just like you. But now you're bright enough to lead them out. That's the purpose of that pain. That's the purpose of that authenticity, that rawness, being willing to stare it in the face and overcome it. But staring in the face is scary. It's very scary. It requires vulnerability, it requires courage. It's full of uncertainty. But what I found is that the longer you stare at it, the more that what you're staring at cowers.
Absolutely. So how you're a young person, Aaron, so how do you have such strong, I guess you stand with such conviction? It has to come from your parents. I know it comes from the parents and the value systems that they started to, share with you, right? Because I am right now currently myself seeing that parents having hard time parenting these days because the world has changed. It's not easy
Yeah.
to parent anymore. It's not the same parenting that you and I had, and especially you, seeing you speak like this, I can see there was a lot of strength from your parents that was given to you to be the person you are.
Yeah.
So how
Well,
was
thank you. Thank you for that. I really, really appreciate that. And I do credit so much to my parents. They set the example, taught me right from wrong very early on. I have an older sister. She's 18, excuse me, 20 months older than I am. She's my best friend to my core. I would do anything for her. And she and I, we dream together. Oh, this is the life we're gonna live. We're gonna do this and this. And she's my older sibling. Kind of the joke that we had growing up was that I was the older sibling. I was a little bit more, she said I was the more responsible, more disciplined
But
one.
also you're a futurist. You had the future thinking. So
Yes. So I was constantly thinking ahead of like, what are the implications of what I'm doing now? How does this set me up for failure? How does this set me up for success? To the best of my ability. My dad was a firefighter, 37 years, LA City. And that, just by nature of the trade, is very regimented. It's very, A's and B's, X's, O's, ones and zeros. It's very yes, sir, no, sir. He taught me that very early on. My mom, flamenco dancer, very artistic. She taught me musicality in the world. She taught me how to be a gentleman, and she taught me how to show up in that way. And they positively reinforced behaviors that were respectful. And one thing that I always remember my parents doing for my sister and I is whenever we were on our best behavior in public, my parents always made it a point to tell us that they received a compliment from someone else's parents and how much it meant to them. I always remember that. And I couldn't tell you like what exact situation, but I would remember getting in the car and dad saying, hey, Aaron, Savannah, when we were out there today, I just gotta say, Ralph and Jenny, they made a comment saying that you were both so well behaved, some of the most well behaved kids they'd ever seen, and just know that for mom and dad, that means the absolute world to us. We can't even tell you how much we appreciate that. I vividly remember that. And when mom and dad reinforce that behavior, when they positively recognize that you've done something that they've asked, you want to do it more. But they started with me very, very early. They had that heads up, that awareness, and were giving us love that they may not have received when they were children, but took that pain and said, okay, do I want to perpetuate this or do I want to change it? So they broke generational curses just in one generation. For me, I reflect on that upbringing that I had. I'm not naive to the fact that I have a two-parent household and that nowadays that can be very rare. I have the benefit of that. But if I can be a type of male role model, a father figure of sorts, if that leaves a generation of young men better than I found them, if that means that they can show up for their parents in a better way, for their teachers, for their classmates, their peers, if I give them enough courage to tell a buddy of theirs, hey, no, you shouldn't be doing drugs, and in high school you shouldn't be skipping class. You should work hard at your sports. You should work hard in the classroom. If I can be an example of what happens when you do the things you should do, then I see that as a positive impact. I credit my parents to the example they gave me. I've seen examples of kids doing things that didn't serve them and saw the consequences of doing the things that they shouldn't have done. And so it was equal parts being told what I should do, seeing what happens when you don't do it, and making mistakes. But I sit here and pretend like I've never made a mistake, like I'm this perfect, goody two shoes kid. Like, no, I absolutely made my mistake because I've messed up time and time again. But it was about being willing to learn from them and trying to strive towards a North Star. You give them a North Star to work toward.
I see that you have some sort of grounding. There's you are very grounded. Does that come through your parents? Did they give you that, or did you develop, or are you doing something to ground yourself? You're very grounded when you're speaking.
I can't say, I cannot in confidence say that it happened without my parents.
Yeah,
right?
of
They
course.
they instill these practices and these beliefs into me from a very young age, and I'm sure that they have created a foundation for me to build upon. It's from there, it's been a combination of nurture and nature. I come from sports. I played baseball. One of the kind of the metaphors that you say in baseball is you can fail 7 times and still be a Hall of Famer. That's what if you're playing baseball and your batting average is you got 3 hits out of 10 at bats, you're batting 300, but you're a Hall of Famer. So I guess you could say by nature of the sport, I played for 17, 18 years of my life. It was this resilience was kind of embedded in practice. It was embedded within the culture of the sport. That transferred to my day-to-day life. For me, a religion plays a huge part of it too. Like I'm was raised Catholic. That for me keeps me grounded. It keeps me willing to distinguish between right and wrong. Is this good for me? Is this bad for me from a religious standpoint? So I give all the credit to God for that, because there's no way that I'm doing this without him. And James has become a vessel of God for me. I feel that God sometimes speaks to me through James, and when I'm fortunate enough to hear God myself, I feel like a message comes out better. But everything that I am is a result of people who have been willing to pour into me. I've just tried to do right by them and build upon the chance that they gave me.
So now you're a speaker. You're speaking to who exactly? Young students, university? Like where do you speak?
Yeah, primarily universities, colleges, high schools, youth sports organizations. For I guess clarity's sake, I'm 28 years old. Started college 10 years ago, or 10 years ago, I just had my 10-year high school reunion last year, which was a blast from the past as well. But primarily that audience, the benefit that I have with those audiences is that I've got enough distance to say, okay, like I've seen some things. I don't know everything. I will never claim to, but I've had some experiences that I think you can benefit from. But I'm also close enough in age to where the students don't feel so removed from who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you see a lot has changed for who is 18 now to compare to when you were 18?
Yes and no. Yes, in that my generation had like the tail end of knowing what it was like to play until the lights came on, until the street lights came on. It's the joke is, we had one thing to play with when we grew up, and that was called outside. You played with outside, that's what you played with. Driving in the car, and the most entertaining thing you had was trying to see if your favorite drop of water reached the bottom of the window. And we didn't have the iPads. I had a Game Boy growing up, but we knew what it was like to be without electronics for a little bit. And the young generation, especially current high schoolers, current 18-year-olds of today, they were born into Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok. They were born into that. And with how prevalent it is for businesses to succeed, every business knows you need to have a social media presence. You need to have a digital footprint if you want to succeed. There's demand for those jobs. So these kids kind of don't really have a choice. It's very hard to avoid it. The problem is, like we said, it's easy to fake on social media. It's very easy to be influenced by what you see. If someone's winning, if someone's prettier, if someone's more muscular, or if they're dressed, what have you, fill in the blank, very easy to be influenced by that. I was spared that, at least. I couldn't imagine being in high school right now and the pressure that these kids are going through. One of the best things that I heard Gary Vee say to a parent who asked, what do I do about my kid in social media? He said, you can do one of two things. One, you can take all social media away from them, which, let's be real, probably not likely. Even if you take away their phones, or if you block all the apps, they're going to go to a friend. They're going to go on their computer. They're going to find a way. I saw somebody that used Twitter on a refrigerator one time, like, because they're all high-tech and digital screens. You either take away all so much social media, or you boost their self-confidence in such a way that whatever online troll has to say about them, they're not going to believe it. If you give them enough confidence and enough evidence of, hey, you come from great stock, you are going to make a difference in this world, you have done XYZ, and that's how I know you're going to do great things in this life. If you reinforce that, they're going to have a mentality that's going to be strong enough to face the internet.
Absolutely. You're right. 100%. It's not about avoiding. Kids don't,
Yeah.
You can't avoid technology anymore, with the AI and what's coming up, they're part of that world. Can't keep them protected. So introduce it. I always say have balance and boundaries. As parents, we have to set them. And on top of them, make sure that they understand who they are. There's no comparison to who you see on the internet or listen to those people, right? They're not your role models.
And I will say too, everything that I've said this entire podcast, I do not have children. I very much look forward to the day. I do not need to have kids tomorrow. I don't need to have kids in 9 months. But when that day comes, I look forward to it. And everything that I do, I'll give a lecture on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. For my intrinsic motivator, one of the most deeply set motivators I have is that one day I want to be the best father I can possibly be. Everything that I learned about finance, to trying to build a financial foundation, to learning how to handle liars, to what if my kid gets bullied, to how do I know how to give basic medical attention in case my kid gets hurt, loving their mother to the best of my ability. These are all things that I'm constantly keeping a track of, so that when the day comes for me to be a father, I'm as ready as possible. I know you can never be ready to be a parent because there's no handbook, there's no manual on how to be a parent, right? But if I can do something now to prepare for that day, then I will. That being said, I can be completely wrong in everything that I'm saying. Like I'm not going to stand here and say, this is how you be a good parent, this is what you should do, because I am not a parent. All I can offer is I'm closer to the generation. I grew up on the tail end of this technological wave, and I at least was able to make enough good decisions that I feel kept me out of some trouble that my peers fell into. I've also had a very close look at the world of social media in the worst ways, and I've also seen some of the greatest things come from social media. I got in contact with James Dixon because of social media. I've been able to put a positive message out and receive wonderful messages from people because of social media. Is it all bad? No. Is it all good? Definitely not. But I will not pretend like I am a parent and I know how to parent, because I do not. But one day I do look forward to that chapter of my life.
But you're grounded. Your message to yourself is very grounded and from a good place. You said, I want to be the best. That's all you can do, right? And that's why I released my new book, Cracking the Parenting Codes.
Yeah, I'm sure like it makes complete sense why your book went to a top seller as fast as it did, Kohila, because just the title in and of itself is enough for parents to be like, okay, I want to know, like, I didn't know there was a code. I'm glad that there is a code. I want to know how to crack it.
Yes, and there's not one code, because somebody said it should have been code. It's not, it's codes, because your parenting style is different than my parenting style.
Yeah.
And then another parent, because we're all different, right? This is coming from the school system where we think we all learn the same way. We apply the same model, but it's not. We're all different. So there are codes, and you've got to find your own code that works for you, from your belief system and what you want for your child. The values are so important, that guides us, right? Important.
Absolutely. There's a quote that I loved reference. It's about the talent genius argument. I think it was Immanuel Kant that said it. And it was, talent is hitting a target that no one else can hit, and genius is hitting a target no one else can see. I don't think the educational system has spent enough time in leaning into that metaphor. Genius hitting a target no one else can see. Maybe there's not even maybe, without a doubt, there are students in that class who are geniuses trying to hit the talent target, but they don't realize that their genius is music. They don't realize that their genius is art. They don't realize that their genius is empathy. Like, goodness, like there's got to be a different avenue that the student can take if you show them, or that they already can see, but they're trying to force themselves into the talent mold, into a very specific type of, copy paste outcome, that they never have a chance to explore their genius. And it makes no wonder why they get discouraged by education.
And that's because there's no creativity. There's no space for creativity, right? We have to fit into that curriculum we have to force fit that. And when you force fit it, anything else you say outside of it, you're going to be called, that's wrong.
That's right.
So then you shut down, right? You're not going to say it because that's wrong. It doesn't follow what they're saying, so I can't say it. So from a young age, if you develop that, you don't have the opportunity to shine your genius.
There's one of my key talks that I give. I talk about how numbers never lie, right? Like the statistic for first generation college students graduating from university in 4 years is 27%. The statistic that they graduate from college, period, is 20%. That's according to Pew Research. This is as of 2022, 2023. 27 and 20%. 20% odds. That's 1 in 5 are going to get their diploma. But I lost my train of thought, but I apologize. But it's 20%. You talk about odds like that, you have to give them a format. Give them something that they can work toward. If you try to copy paste everything like this, very structured, like you're wrong or you're right, the students, that statistic is only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. But there's a lot of genius in there. There's a lot of great examples that come out of there. Sorry, now I'm remembering. when I talk about statistics, according to Pew Research, 27% first generation graduates in 4 years, 20% that they graduate, period. A lot of room for failure. I talk about how numbers never lie, true, but they never tell the whole story. They never tell the whole story. But if you stop at numbers telling the whole story, believing, oh, the numbers tell the truth, right? That's kind of what I feel like is implied, and why I've never liked that phrase is because if numbers never lie, you think that they tell the whole truth, right? The whole truth, nothing but the truth. The 4.0 student isn't guaranteed an A in life. The 2.4 student isn't guaranteed a fail or a C in life. They talk about how the A students, they become good employees, B workers work for the government, and then C students become entrepreneurs and CEOs of companies. Which I always thought was a funny joke, but there's 10 years out from school, I'm starting to see it.
It's true, because now they're unleashes their creativity, right? Because they couldn't in that model. They are not able to. Now there's no more model. I'm free into the real world. Now I see problems that I could solve. And that's an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
If you can see a problem that somebody else cannot solve and you solve it, you're an entrepreneur. You have a business.
Yep. There's a book by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Really insane name. Oh, you're familiar? Okay, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He has a book, Creativity, Godfather of Flow and Neuroscience. I love that area of study. He talks about creativity being the connection of two seemingly unrelated, distinct points, bringing them together, and you create a new solution. It's creativity. Do you see that a lot from the educational element of like how do you think that the educational system can help students pair those two seemingly far off points, bringing them together? How do you think the school should adjust, or education system could accomplish that?
Currently, it's not even possible to do any adjustments, because right now we're at a point where the students don't want to be in that environment since COVID. They saw that they could study from home. They don't want to be. They look at it as, I'm going to surrender myself into a jail for the next 6 hours, and you're going to tell me where to sit and stand. And they don't want it. They don't want education. That's why there's a huge fight happening between the students and the teachers, because teachers are now managing that behavior. And when you're managing behavior, you become like a police officer, right? The relationship switches. It's no longer the students want to learn, teachers can't teach. And at the top level down, they are enforcing this curriculum and testing. So you see the whole three elements are like in a very, very friction. It's so much happening that it can't be fixed right now. That's the sad part. Students needs to get what they want. Like, it's like I always tell this example, like if you have a storefront, you put merchandise out and you're like, why isn't anyone buying? Oh, no one's buying. And you're like, oh, because the merchandise is not what they're looking for. It's what we're doing to our students. We're bringing them to school and we're putting out stuff. They're like, I don't know why I need to study this. Tell me why. I don't see the point. I don't want to study. So we're giving a merchandise to people that they don't want. And now we're asking, why aren't they taking in all these information? So there's a huge problem happening. That's why a lot of passionate teachers are leaving the profession, because they don't feel satisfied being part of babysitting or policing our students. They want to really be helpful to make a difference, right? They want to transform their students. They want to see them learning. So
is there something, I'd be very curious to hear your opinion on this, and not to like switch roles, like question.
No, ask me. Yeah.
But I'm genuinely curious. What's your opinion on the argument of like these students and kids maybe are too young to fully understand their decisions? So for example, you could have a 9-year-old boy who loves video games. He says, I want to learn video games. I want to learn about this. I loved video games when I was a kid. I would play 8 hours of video games, and I'll fully admit that. And my parents
I did too. Mario, I had to pass every level.
Right? For me, it was a game called Top Spin. It was a tennis game. I didn't even play tennis, but I was just like, I'm so into this, and playing it for 9 hours a day. But my parents obviously at one point put a limit on that, saying, hey, not good for you. You shouldn't do this. I remember I had straight A's, and then I got my first B, and my dad said, nope, pulls the plug, tucks it away. I didn't see it for the next 2 years or something like that until my grades came back. But at that time, my 9-year-old brain would have said, no, like, this is it, Dad. I've been missing this. Like, this is what I want to do. You're familiar with neuroscience and the concept and that reward neurochemicals and that perpetuation of behavior. Where's the fine line between these kids getting a premature dopamine kick from something that just they feel very compelled to versus not hindering their ability to make decisions that really are something that they are close to, that they are driven to pursue.
I think at the school level, for example, we have students who like the video game, right? For example, let's just use that example. You can teach reading through that. Just through their interest, you can teach reading and math through that. The whole interest, right? Because when someone's interested in something, if I talk about that, my students is hooked.
Yeah.
Right? We're not serving them from a place of what their interest lies in. We're serving from something far off into the distance because it's called the curriculum, because we set it and we standardized it. We're going to test you. You know, grade ones are getting full testing to prove they can read and write. Grade ones don't know how to take tests on computer, first of all, right? This is what's getting, these testings are being done to grade one, grade two students. By grade two, many of our students think that I'm not capable because look at my test score, you know? By grade two, they're already checked out. I must be dumb because look at me, I didn't even do well on that test. But a lot of teachers tell me that some of these kids don't even know how to actually maneuver the test they're being given on this computer. They don't get a lesson on how do you actually do press the button to answer the question. So there's a lot of things that are happening that are not in alignment for these kids. So I don't think grade ones should be tested that hard.
No. I came across, I don't know the validity of it, but it was about Japanese schools, how they don't receive tests until the 5th grade. Is that true?
It should be like that. If they are doing it, it's awesome. And, because testing has to be done in the proper way. And testing can be done without giving a proper test, right? I can quiz you right now in certain things without you knowing I'm quizzing you, right? It doesn't have to be paper and pen and sit and write and we're going to do a test and put anxiety on that kid and then he's not prepared. And how many of us got lessons on how to prepare for a test? Does school ever teaches us that?
No.
No. Does a school ever teach us how our brain works? We control it every day. It's controlling us every single day.
I remember when I was a kid, I watched a show called Drake and Josh, and it was on like Nick at Night or something. And if you're familiar with the show, or for anyone who's not familiar, Drake was like the cool guy. He was the cool brother. The Drake and Josh were brothers. Drake was the cool brother. He was like the rock star musician. He was a singer, but he didn't really do well in class. He wasn't exactly a star student. And his brother Josh was kind of like the nerdy, typical guy who did really well in school, but wasn't really cool in the social scene. But Drake really needed to pass a science test, and he couldn't get it. They were learning chemistry. It was about like atoms and molecules and that kind of thing. And Josh was trying to tell him, like, look, this is an atom and this is a molecule. It's a bunch of atoms together, and that's what it looks like. And it just wasn't clicking for Drake. He's like, I don't get it, dude. Like, I don't get what you're telling me. So then Josh took a moment, he pauses and he walks around, he says, okay, you're a musician, you play guitar. It's like, yeah. Okay, an atom is a single note. That's you plucking one string. And he's like, okay. He's like, and a molecule is a chord when you're playing all the strings together. And he's like, I get it. That's kind of what comes to mind as you're talking about this. Like, you got to frame it through something that the student can understand.
Yeah, absolutely. My son was taking grade 11 science, chemistry and biology, and he said to me, I didn't do that well in chemistry part, Mom, but I really did really well on the biology part. I said, how? Like, what? How did you do? Because I watched all the Magic School Bus. I knew all that. I knew it through there, how all our systems works inside our body. So I answered every question right. So it didn't come from a book or someone going, learn about your stomach. This is how your stomach works or digestive system work. He actually got it from the whole Magic School Bus series, which we watched again and again when he was young.
How about that?
4 years old. He remembers at grade
Perfect
11.
example. Yep.
Right? So you have to teach it through what they are interested.
Yep.
And we have to teach our kids how to learn. We tell our students what to learn all the time. We have to stop. We have to stop that. And we really have to teach our students how your brain works. How are you going to be in control of your brain? You control your brain, not it controls you. If we can do that, they'll win in anything. They'll learn everything. Until that system comes, that's what I do as a learning success coach with my students.
Love
really
that.
get them to understand their brain.
Yeah. The world needs more teachers, more educators like you, Kohila, without a doubt.
Yeah, and that's our movement. We have now over 200 learning success coaches I've trained.
Yeah, I
And
remember you
then
shared that at one of our team meetings. That was such wonderful news.
and this is what these teachers are becoming so that they can deliver this type of learning. I don't even like the word education anymore because for what it has become. It's
Mm,
about learning. It's about
mm,
learning and how do I learn? It's a curiosity, right? How do I
yep,
learn is a
yep,
curious place to be versus, oh, it's an education. You have to
yeah,
educate yourself.
yep, yep.
Yeah,
Stay learning, keep learning.
yeah, it's a lifelong thing, right? It never stops. There's always something to
Absolutely.
learn. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I just see a very young, grounded young man coming up, motivational speaker for our students. It's so needed right now to hear your voice, our students and young adults, because since COVID, I know that many of them are lost hope, and especially
Yeah.
when a system is, not supporting them the way it should. You will help a lot of students and young people. So thank you.
I greatly appreciate that, Kohila. That no, please know that that is no small compliment coming from you. For the educator that you are, the teacher that you are, the mission that you have to bring learning, effective learning to this country, to students. That teaching, what do they say? Like teaching is the hardest job, second to being a parent. And you are the unsung hero, the backbone of this country. Like I mentioned, this I wouldn't be who I am without the teachers and professors who poured into me, who fortunately instilled that confidence in me that made me want to show up the next day. It's a big difference when you want to show up to school, when you want to, when you have a motivation or an incentive to do well. Fortunately, I had just enough teachers to give me that. But I think about all the students who didn't have that. What could have, what could have happened in their young years, 10 years old, 8 years old, 13, critical moments in their life. What could have happened if they had educators and teachers like you? So I think what you're doing, Kohila, is beautiful work.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's make a difference together.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you, Aaron, for
Thank you
being
so
here
much,
today.
Kohila.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Our purpose for this episode was to spark a reevaluation of the current education system. For more episodes offering practical and comprehensive strategies to enhance learning, please visit www.learningsuccessacademy.com. It is crucial to ensure that children have access to the holistic neurogrowth learning approach, enabling them to break free from the constraints of an outdated educational framework. This is your opportunity to gain insight and break away from a flawed system, setting your children on a path to lifelong success that truly nurtures their thirst for knowledge. That's all for now. We look forward to having you join us for the next episode.